I was born in Vietnam in June 1993. I was found in a tree in a tea field by my aunts at the time. In Vietnamese law, from my understanding, you're not allowed to put your own child up for adoption. So it has to be another person, or the child has to be left at a church on the doorstep.
You know, before me, my mom and my dad, when he was alive, they were trying to adopt from the States, but they were just having so many delays and problems. Then after my dad died, my mom decided to adopt internationally because they didn't allow single parent adoptions.
I got put in an orphanage at the age of 2 years old because I had a really bad accident where I got burned across my stomach, and they couldn't afford my hospital bills. So me and my sister, who got adopted with me, were both put in an orphanage together. And she was 13 when she was adopted, and I was 3.
It's very obvious that neither of them had me, and since they're a lesbian couple and I literally look like neither of them, it's just definitely we're sure that I did not come from either of them. So they were really open about that from the start. So I knew that, and I knew where I came from, and people couldn't tell me otherwise. And my parents always stuck to that notion to never let anyone tell me who I was.
Transracial adoptees have become more visible today, with international celebrities such as Angelina Jolie and Sandra Bullock adopting children from abroad. But transracial adoptions have occurred since the 1960s due to factors such as birth control and the increased social acceptance of single motherhood. The first recorded transracial adoption in America was of an African American child from Minnesota in 1948. 1972, the National Association of Black Social Workers debated the practice, calling transracial adoption unnatural and artificial in a statement. 1973, the Child Welfare League of America revised their adoption standards to favor same-race placements as a reaction. 1978, we see this decline again with transracial adoptions in the Native American community with the implementation of the Indian Child Welfare Act. After World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War, there became a visibly growing number of orphan children living in poverty. The first notable public occurrence of transracial international adoption was conducted by an evangelical couple, Bertha and Harry Holt, who adopted 8 Korean children in 1955 through proxy adoptions. Beyond the 1970s, America was seeing more international adoption than ever, with 85% of them being transracial.
Well, my mom got the phone call as soon as I was born, so she was able to name me and everything. I was officially adopted and all the paperwork done. I think it was November after I was born. My mom had to go back and forth between Peru. She came back and went twice in August and July after I was born. When I was adopted, there was, I think 50 or 60 people at the airport to come and meet me, and everyone was related to me, so it was just a huge family. When you look at a lot of people in my family, my nephews are all Asian American, and my other cousins, a lot of them are biracial. So it's, when you even take a picture, a lot of times I know people get confused because they're who's who, who's what, and it's just, I guess, diverse.
My adopted parents actually live in Vietnam now, and they run an NGO over there called Steady Footsteps, and they're amazing. They're awesome people. My mom's a physical therapist, and my dad's just an artist, and he's just a generally awesome guy. But for whatever, things got really bad between us, and I was kicked out of the house when I was 16 while I was living in Da Nang. And I came back here on my own and lived with my sister Elaine. And ever since then, it's been nothing but emails here and there, and there was a long 3-year silence immediately after I got kicked out. We were both really strong-minded and opinionated, and I think we were very similar, and we always shared the same opinion on bigger things, but yeah, it was mostly just I didn't want to act like a child and she would treat me like an adult. It was like a dominance thing. You know, she was always large and in charge, and like as I got older, I wanted to be more like, I don't know. I think I was just trying to be her, and it just didn't work out very well for either of us. Like recently I've been hanging out with my sister Elaine a lot more, and my nieces, Eviana and Juliana. And Juliana is only 4 months old, so she was just born recently. And I love them. I love them all, and like the whole family thing is like a new thing for me. It's yeah, I mean, I'm learning how to do it. It feels awesome. It's great. So
They found my birth mom, and she wanted to give up a baby. She was still pregnant, and then on January 3rd, when she had me, they sent a fax over to the States and let my parents know that their baby girl was just born. And they came down immediately to spend time with me as a baby for the first 6 months. And then after 6 months of nursing, I was free to go to America. I don't have any siblings, so it was just me. All of our trips that we took together, it was just me and probably like an American Girl doll and my favorite blanket. And I always pouted because I didn't have any brothers and sisters, which was weird because part of me thinks like, since I do have brothers and sisters out there, there's possibly someone running around who is very similar to me and maybe the same temperament. Growing up, it was always good. We always talked about things. Even to this day, my mom always talked about things with me. And it's taken years sometimes for her to open up about certain things to me. So that's been really nice to like discover as an adult.
I was found by my aunt, put up for adoption. All the paperwork was signed by her. My mother and father were not wed at the time, so it was kind of a shame for the both of them to have a child. And then I stayed at the orphanage in Hanoi, Vietnam until November of 1993, so I was about 5 months old at the time of adoption. My relationship with my adoptive parents was always really close. The family is one of the pillars of what I believe in, so my parents, my sister, we were always really close. You go into a restaurant and it's just, okay, how many people are with the group? And they say 4. They'll be the 2 of them. They will point to the 2 other white people who are standing in line. It's like, well, nope, it's the 2 Asians here. We're part of the group.
I met my mom for the first time when me and my adopted parents went to Vietnam when I was 13. My adopted mom is a physical therapist, and she signed up for this like volunteer program for like a month to go to Vietnam and like teach physical therapy in the hospitals, and she got the position, and we all went. And during that time in Vietnam, I met up with my biological mom, and they were all lined up there at this hotel when I pulled up in a van, and they all started crying. And for me, it might sound really cold, but like I literally, I was a snobby little 14-year-old anyway, but like I literally was like, this is like meeting strangers. I have no idea who these people are. I mean, obviously I was affected by it. Like I wasn't like a soulless child. I was like, dang, like, this means a lot to these people. And that meant something to me. But like outside of that, it was like meeting strangers that were like in love with you for some reason. I was like pretty set in who I was. I was like an American dude. I just wanted to be a pro surfer and a pro skater, and yeah, I was pretty unconcerned with everything else. I didn't have very much Vietnamese culture exposure at all. My adopted parents would like take me to stuff sometimes, like Vietnamese stuff, just so I had some sort of idea, but like it was very little, and I remember not liking them.
I grew up in a town called Point Pleasant, New Jersey, and it doesn't have like a huge population, but everyone calls it the bubble because it's very homogenized and everyone's pretty much the same. I think there were one other Black child who was adopted when I went to school, and then there was 1 or 2 Hispanic students, but that was it. Everyone else was white and Caucasian. After I grew up and I was in, I think like 5th or 6th grade-ish, there were more kindergartners entering who were adopted from other countries too. Even when I was younger, we would always have books about Peru and different movies, and whenever anything happens in Peru, she'll always save any clippings about political changes or anything. But growing up when I was younger, we used to always read like adoption like stories and different books. So I always knew my story, and I always knew like that I was adopted.
So one of my mom's, the reason why she wanted to adopt a Cambodian child was because she spent time in Thailand with the Peace Corps. And she went to Cambodia on vacation and saw all the people and just fell in love with the people and the culture. And so a big part of like growing up was her sharing that culture with me. So I did have some roots and ties to it. Well, my mom tried to get me to go to Buddhist temple, and that did not work because I have too much energy and I can't sit for that long. So I was like 7 years old, and maybe 7. And there was this girl who I hung out with, and she was friends with her mom was friends with my mom and my Jewish mom, and we'd gone to synagogue together. And we were playing together after school, and we were probably playing pretend or playing with dolls or something. And I said that I wanted to be one of the princesses. I don't remember which one, let's say like Ariel. And she said that I couldn't because I was brown. And I like didn't really understand what she meant at first. And then I was kind of like, oh, she was like talking about my skin tone. I remember like telling my parents, and my mom retells me this story to this day, and she's just like, it was just such an innocent little child saying like, I don't really get it. And because I didn't get it. And my mom had to explain like, well, that's racism, and you're not gonna hang out with that girl anymore for one. And like, not to let people talk to you like that, and like that I can be whoever I want to be.
I didn't have a ton of culture history for Vietnam and influence until I was in high school, where I was around a lot more Asians due to us moving around. For most of my childhood, the military bases we were on were army bases, so there's a high population of Koreans, but there wasn't a lot of Vietnamese around. When I got to high school, we had more of an Asian organization that you can join and learn more about. There's a lot more Filipinos than Vietnamese, but there's still enough to focus in. And then once I got into college, I was able to focus in and learn a bit more about the Vietnamese history, the Vietnamese culture, their struggles. And I felt very separate to a lot of the struggles that they talk about because I didn't have it affect me directly. But at the same time, I recognized, the importance of what happened during the Vietnam War, the fall of Saigon, the veterans that had huge issues when they came back from the Vietnam War, the struggles they went through directly affected my ability to come back to the country and be adopted and kind of have the life I've been lucky enough to have. So anytime I have an opportunity for, thanking particularly Vietnamese war veterans, I do my best to do that. I understand a total of like 4 Vietnamese words. So I've seen it more on the American side, where one of my works I've been walked up to by other Asians, and they try to communicate with me in whatever language they use. The most common is Cantonese and Korean, which I still can't figure out why. And I just have to explain to them I understand 0 of what they're saying, and no matter what they think and what I look like, I do not speak a lick of any Asian language.
The Department of Counseling and Educational Leadership at Montclair State University developed a model which follows the process of identity development and navigation through which adoptees develop their relationship to their birth and adoptive cultures via reculturative activities and experiences. Adoptee culture. Adoptees may feel neither their birth nor adoptive culture fits them, and instead identify primarily as an adoptee and associate primarily with adoptees. Reclaimed culture. Adoptees may fully immerse themselves within their birth culture with the ability to pass and authentically, competently, and proficiently perform within their birth culture. Bicultural. They identify with their adoptive white culture to which they assimilated and with their hyphenated American ethnic group. Assimilated culture explored. Adoptees may continue to assimilate to their lived adoptive culture and may attempt to hold on to their white status. Combined culture. adoptees may have a combination of the previous outcomes.
People were saying, who were in I guess Latin American adoption group, again online, they were all saying you have to remember to bring your passport when you're traveling, you have to remember to bring all this stuff now with ICE and immigration. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot, I should do that. Because a lot of my friends that I used to hang out with were also adopted, so there wasn't anything like, oh, I'm adopted. It was like, oh, everyone here is adopted. So it wasn't like a weird thing. It wasn't even that different like for like a family construct. I think the weirdest thing that happened was one time one of my friends, we were at, I guess like a little kid party in the backyard, and there was only one white child there because everyone else was adopted from South America. And everyone's like, who's that? Who's that? I got my first job when I was 16, and occasionally people would just come up to me and speak to me in Spanish, and I have absolutely no clue what they're saying. I took French in high school, and I was just like, I'm sorry, and I don't want to offend them or anything, but it's just, I know I look Spanish, but I don't really even call myself Hispanic because I think that that would be a bit wrong because I never grew up in a Hispanic culture, so.
I grew up in Virginia Beach, like the oceanfront area of Virginia Beach, and I'm like literally one of like 2 or 3 Asian dudes I know that lives in this entire area, and one of the few Asian dudes I went to school with. And like I'm Vietnamese by blood and by genetics, but like culturally I'm not Vietnamese, you know, I'm American. And that being American means anything, you know. You could be a Vietnamese American, you know, but you can't. Vietnam has a more like, you know, it's a more obvious culture to spot. Like, you know, like I might be Asian physically, but I'm American through and through. Like physically I'm American too. Like that's what America is, and that's what's awesome about it. It's like the only thing that I'm really proud about is our diversity and the fact that I can know for sure that I'm a true American regardless of what I look like.
I had such a unique path compared to other people that, you know, while I haven't had the hardships they have, I need to recognize that they do have the hardships. But at the same time, you know, I have been called racist by many people now because I have the mentality of you shouldn't let the race define you. So when somebody's like, oh, you know, I'm Vietnamese, I'm like, oh, I am too. But let's be honest, I'm about as white as you can actually act underneath it all. I'm trying to learn bits and pieces, both of my own culture and Chinese culture, but mine, it's tougher. My girlfriend's family, they're Chinese by genetics, but her parents were born in Vietnam, so they are able to kind of guide me and teach me a little bit more slowly. But again, most of what I know is food or where's the bathroom.
Being too white for the Asian kids and being too Asian for the white kids. You had to just find the right group of friends who didn't make any of that apparent. It took me a while to navigate and find the right friends who did accept me for who I was, and they didn't care that I had 2 moms. They didn't care that my moms were white and I wasn't. Like, that wasn't anything. They just accepted me as myself. There's an excitement. There aren't that many of us in the States. I think the biggest population is like based out of Philadelphia, and you know when someone's Cambodian, you know a Khmer. There's something in our face, there's something in our skin, and you know. And so when you find out that like common thing, it's like, I think it's really exciting because, you know, it is a small group of people. They face genocide, so what is left are, you know, that's what's left, and we have to like stay together. So I think there's like a strong like pride in our identity and being Khmer. Definitely approached a few people, been like, I know this is a really weird question. I'm pretty sure it can be offensive sometimes to some people, but I gotta ask it because we could be related. We could be like second cousins and it would be awesome.
Well, anyone coming into this now, they're lucky because we're in the age of technology. They have so many routes of information they can find. Unless their direct family is the type to not want to discuss race, they should be able to find the types of information they want. They should be able to find groups to have cultural discussions with and learn more about their history, about what they want. So use your resources, use everything available to you if you want to learn. If you don't want to learn, that's fine, but don't forget where you come from and where your roots are, because even if you don't let it define you, it's still going to be a part of you in the type of society we live in.
Just like be confident in yourself. Like everyone has a different story. Especially teaching now, like you hear some horrible, horrific stories of how kids are growing up. And I think like your life is what you just make of it.
Be it, before an adoption or after the adoption, depending on how old you are. But, there's no right or wrong in being like too Asian, too white, too black. There's no right way and wrong way to be anyone except for being yourself. And I think that a lot of transracial adoptees will learn that a lot easier than some other people, because we're forced to learn like to be ourselves and to be an individual at a young age, because we don't always have other people to, you don't look at someone else and, you're not looking at your mom or dad and being like, oh, I look like them, I'm just like them, I'm going to be just like them when I grow up. You have to make your identity as you go. And it's going to be hard, but you'll get it. And I'm still working at it. I think I'll be working at it for the rest of my life.